and welcome everyone to my channel. I'm Pragya Bhatt. I'm a yoga teacher and new mother. Today I'm in conversation with yoga teacher Rosa Santana, a devoted yoga teacher in the Iyengar lineage. This is part of a series of conversations I'm having with yoga practitioners and teachers who have navigated pregnancy, postpartum, and motherhood. I was inspired to start these conversations because, as a yoga practitioner and teacher, when I was pregnant, there were hardly any resources which could help me make sense of what was happening and which could also give me insight so that I could fully appreciate the experience that I was having. Rosa, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. And let me give a little bit of an introduction about Rosa, although I think most of you might know her anyways. So Rosa Santana is a certified Iyengar yoga teacher and certified yoga therapist by the International Association of Yoga Therapists. She has been studying, teaching, and propagating the therapeutic art of Iyengar yoga and the teachings of Patanjali since 1995. She was drawn to the mental and physical discipline after suffering 3 accidental falls, one of which fractured her tailbone. Since healing her back, neck, and sciatica pains, she has introduced yoga to thousands of students who had never experienced this healing art, philosophy, and science. In 2001, she founded Yoga Rosa in the Miami area, which has become a respected yoga studio in the classical teachings of Iyengar yoga. She has hosted numerous internationally recognized teachers and continues to teach and mentor yoga students and teachers. She has had the privilege of studying directly with yoga master BKS Iyengar and the Iyengar family in India and the US on numerous occasions. She continues to learn from the Iyengars as well as senior level teachers in the US and abroad. Rosa has presented the benefits of Iyengar yoga as a guest lecturer at Nova Southeastern University, the National Multiple Sclerosis Society of South Florida and Puerto Rico, and the National Parkinson's Foundation. She has had the good fortune of interviewing many senior level Iyengar yoga teachers on the YouTube channel Roads to Bliss. She leads Iyengar intensives in the US and internationally. She believes yoga is accessible, healing, and transformational to all who try it. Rosa habla español y fala Portuguese. Yeah, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So, so Rosa, once again, welcome to the channel.
Thank you.
So let's begin. Tell us a little bit about your experience with pregnancy and how many children do you have, and and did yoga play a role in your pregnancies?
So now I have to back up because my children are now 33, 31, and 30. I have 3 daughters. So now they're adults, but you never stop being a mother. If I go back to I have to think about the years now. No, when I had my daughter, my first daughter, I was pregnant with her, and it was the first time I ever took a yoga class at the gym, at the local gym in Maryland. And I walked into the class. I was about 6 months pregnant. I felt fat and ugly and bloated and horrible. My back hurt, and my feet were swollen. And so I figured, oh, everybody says do yoga, it's going to help you. And I had never done yoga before. So I walk into the gym, which I used to teach aerobics. So I was at the gym anyway. And I went to take this yoga class, and the teacher didn't really know what to do with me. I was at the back of the room, and she pretty much just ignored me the whole class. And she just looked at me when I walked in like, oh, why is she here? You know, the teacher was young, and everybody else was young, and everybody was fit. And the entire class, she was doing everything laying on your belly. So I sat there, kind of like, what do I do? And I twisted, I never did yoga before, so I didn't know what it was. And I figured, I was already feeling self-conscious about my changing body. And this class kind of made me feel worse about myself. And I just remember thinking, I guess yoga's not for pregnant women. And that was in, I guess that was 1991. And I didn't think about it. That was in Maryland. Then when I was in Maryland, I used to teach step aerobics while I was pregnant. And this is with all my poor first daughter. I thought she was the experiment. And I used to teach step aerobics. And I remember that I taught on a Friday, big belly, but I was in really good shape because I was teaching aerobics and doing step aerobics and teaching step aerobics back then. And I gave my last class on a Friday, and some people kept saying, "Oh my God, you're going to have the baby here. How can you be doing this?" But I knew that I was already in shape. It was something that I had already been doing before, so my body was used to it. And Friday was my last class, and she was born on a Monday. My water broke on Sunday. So I really literally taught step aerobics until the end. And I think that I wish I had known about yoga, that I had maybe walked into a different kind of a yoga class, because I feel like it would have been a really wonderful thing. So fast forward, I have two more children, and I'm still doing, aerobic gym stuff to keep me healthy and sane. And I didn't discover yoga until 1995, also at the gym, because I was a gym rat. I've always exercised my whole life. And the only reason I chose this gym was because now I had just moved to Miami, to the Miami area, and I had three children under the age of 4. So I had a 4, a 2-year-old, and a 6-month-old baby. And I went to all the different gyms to see, who's going to take care of my children while I work out so I can regain my pre-baby body. And I chose this gym because I really liked the childcare. But, when you're a mom, those things are very important. And it turned out that that's where I felt safe. It was a beautiful place. It had just opened. And one day when I went in to take the aerobics class, the teacher didn't show up. So I went to the gym owner. I was still new in Maryland, in Florida, I still had a little bit of that Maryland kind of like go, go, go energy. And I said, where's the teacher? And he said, we're so sorry. She was in a car accident, but there's a yoga class starting upstairs. Now, of course, I had that PTSD moment of like, oh God, not yoga, but then I was like, wait, I'm not pregnant. So, I was so angry, and just my emotions were all out of, whack, because I'm still, now when I look back, I think about that. I had a 6-month-old baby, 3 children in a new place. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any time for myself except for the gym time. And so I go to take this yoga class, and it happened to be a teacher that had studied Iyengar Yoga. She wasn't certified yet, and she had never been to India, but, I just remember her telling us downward facing dog pose. I had never put my body in that shape, but I remember that it did something to my mind, that it changed something in my mind. And when I came back to pick up my children, I felt like much more relaxed. I didn't really understand it at the time. This is me now recollecting and remembering, a lot of the emotions of motherhood and of, not having any help and just not having a very supportive husband either. And it was just a lot. And I think that if I had, that's when I started to do yoga. The class was once a week. But I remember the most important, significant, other than the downward dog, and I didn't even understand the instructions. She was saying to roll the arm and to do this and to do that. And my brain was just going, but it was captivated by this, like, something that I had never experienced before. And then she put us in Shavasana. And I was laying there in Shavasana, looking at the ceiling, thinking, remember, I'm at a gym. So I'm thinking this is exercise. So I'm laying there and I'm thinking, I never do this. I never just lay here and do nothing. This is exercise. I like this. Of course, my mind is going cha, 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 cha. But when I finished the class and I came back to my children, I was much more calm. My nerves were soothed. And I felt like, wow, this was good. And over a period of 6 months of me going to this class once a week, the back pain went away. Of course, with motherhood, you're putting the stroller and the car seat, and you're picking up babies and taking them and twisting them and doing all kinds of things with your body that after 6 months, I thought, actually, I didn't even notice that I didn't have back pain. My husband at the time said to me, you haven't complained about back pain. And I kind of thought, oh, I guess I don't have back pain anymore. And the only thing I was doing different was the yoga.
So there's so much to unpack in what you've just spoken about. Like for instance, how when you're pregnant and you're so big, your body is so different from what you're used to. Especially as someone who likes to exercise, and a lot of people watching their yoga practitioners, and you shouldn't be attached to the body that you have, but you appreciate the body, the fact that it can do so many things, and as regular people, we want to fit into our clothes, and now you don't fit into your clothes, and you just feel ungainly. And how you were going to this gym and you were feeling like this, and and the teacher didn't really help that by looking at you, and you just didn't know what to do. But how, when you went to your yoga class postpartum, how it was not just, it wasn't about the physicality of it, but how it helped in like perhaps with the postpartum hormones relaxing you, and maybe that is what was happening. You might not have been aware of that, but that's actually how it helped you, and that's what kept you going back. So, but now that you have experience with so many so many students, pregnant students, and who then come to you postpartum, how, like, do you see what kind of impact do you see yoga having on a woman's pregnancy, for a woman who does yoga, who doesn't do yoga, again postpartum, women who are actually yoga practitioners, regular yoga practitioners, and those who don't? Because a lot of people think it's optional, like even in India, a lot of women are told, yes, you should start yoga. But I always wonder, like, is it just going to a few classes in your second trimester towards your third trimester, or you have a lot of yoga hours under your belt, and then you fall pregnant, so shed a little light, like what have you seen in terms of this? Yeah.
I, like I'll give you an example of what I was doing. I was teaching aerobics. I was practicing aerobics. I was doing step aerobics before I got pregnant. So I was able to continue doing that because I was already fit. I was already in shape. I believe that some doctors have the wrong idea that they send women that are pregnant to go do yoga when they've never done yoga before. And I don't love that. I think that it's what I always recommend to my students is start the yoga before you get pregnant, and then you're going to have like a baseline so that when you get pregnant, because there's so many changes that are happening in your body that if you don't already understand from what you've already done in your practice, I think that the yoga really makes you much more sensitive to your own, what's happening here, the same way, like, oh, one shoulder's up, one shoulder's down. But it also gives us that connection of sensitivity so that we can feel if something is uneven, if your back hurts or whatever it is. I look at it that if you're starting yoga when you're pregnant, it's almost like you're doing an experiment. Gita Iyengar used to always say that it was, it was better to do the yoga before, not to start, because now you're dealing not only with one person, but with two people, and in case if they're twins, three people. So I've always cautioned my students about that, because doctors have recommended students to me because of the mental sensitivity. And if there is absolutely no problem, if they're young, if they have been doing other things, sometimes I would take them as students, and I would be extra cautious, especially, in the first trimester. But it wasn't always my favorite thing. And I would just kind of I would respect whatever the doctor said, but I always agree that they should start the yoga before. What I have seen in my students that did yoga before, throughout their entire pregnancy, that they continued to do yoga. And as soon as I'm always the first one to know that somebody's pregnant. So it's really hard. Sometimes I have to be like, don't say anything. You can't say anything because you're the first one to know. So I always I feel like a big privilege with that. So like I know the secret, but I'm also extra cautious with them because there are two people involved. But what I have seen in my students that started yoga before, did yoga during their pregnancy, and then came back with the baby. And that was our favorite thing when, there's a lot of older people in Florida. So when somebody had the baby, it was everybody's baby. So they would come back, after, and I would say, I don't want to see you for, whatever the doctor tells you in 3 months is, about right. And then you can bring the baby. And a lot of times that would be one of the things, because they didn't have anybody to leave the baby with, or as a new mother, mothers are feeling a little bit, I don't want to say the word insecure, but there is a bond that happens, that attachment between the mother and the baby, that they don't want to leave the baby anywhere. But they could bring the baby because they could use a break. So they could do a downward dog on the ropes. And then, everybody takes turns holding the baby. And, it's like a community thing. It's like the community baby. And once they start crawling, then they can't come anymore because it becomes disruptive. But I saw women that throughout their whole pregnancy, they didn't have any problems with constipation. They didn't have swollen ankles. They didn't have any back problems, any pain. And many of them, everybody was different. And as a teacher, I always believe that as soon as you're pregnant, you already are also not only given the gift of motherhood in that moment, but you're also given this like instant intuition. And so I always honored the mothers when sometimes they're like, this doesn't feel good. And then I would, then let's do something else. There's 200,000 poses that we can do. You don't have to do this one. And some women, they did headstand and shoulder stand until the end because they said it felt so good to take the pressure off of their organs. And then some women, the last month, they were nervous or they didn't feel comfortable doing upside down poses. So then we adapted. And I want to say that before that, I forgot to tell you this. I like to say that I got a lot of women pregnant because before they got pregnant, there were some women that had been trying to conceive for a long time and they couldn't. And I gave them some, poses, and I said, practice this every day and have your husband also do it. It's not just you. And then they ended up getting pregnant. So I always like to joke that I got, some women pregnant that were trying and that couldn't, were having a hard time. And then, but once they went through it, they were so happy, and all of them had really fabulous births. Like there weren't any complications. There weren't any, no, we didn't have any C-sections. It was all natural births, maybe they had an epidural, whatever. And I have a foam block here because I didn't do yoga when I was pregnant, but I had read that Virasana helps to reduce labor pains. So I would tell the women, bring a block with you, whether they're in the hospital or in a birthing room or whatever, cover it with a saran wrap, the plastic wrap. And then if you're able to, sit in Virasana with your block, because this is supposed to help reduce labor pains. And actually, the women that did it, they said it worked. So if anyone is able to, your doctors also have to be open to it, but they wrapped it up, they used it, and they said it worked. So that's just one of the things that I've heard. And compared to women that I know outside of my yoga world that were pregnant and they had swollen ankles, they had back pains, some of them were on bed rest. And then to add to also, I guess I want to call them colleagues that I've watched them, follow them on Instagram from other systems, that sometimes I say, oh my God, I've gone to the point where I've sent them messages because they'll be doing jumpings and Surya Namaskars, sun salutations at 6-7 months pregnant, kind of to, oh, look, I can do anything because I'm pregnant. And you can see the belly being squozen and twisted and everything. And I know it's none of my business, but as a mother, I'm thinking about the baby that I've sent messages. Please try these poses. Please read the Gem for Women, the recommendations by Gita Iyengar, because, if they don't know and they're trying to still keep those chaturangas and arm balances and everything. And then, some of the ones that I have seen doing things like this on Instagram, they end up on bed rest. And I don't know if they realize the relationship between squeezing. I would get a pregnant woman. I say, look, your job right now in your yoga practice is to strengthen your legs for the pushing, to broaden the pelvis so that, as you get bigger, the pelvis will have that mobility. And to lengthen your spine, you have to make room for the baby. That's all my job as a yoga teacher for them. I said, when you don't know what to practice, you think of these things. You've got to make your legs strong. You have to make space for the baby so that the baby can expand. Let go of, the vanity. Yes, your body's going to change. But you know what? After I had the babies, I look at it this way. Yes, my stretch marks and, the changing body, these are like medals of valor, for this amazing human machine that housed three souls, created them, somehow pushed them out, and then fed them like a cow with unlimited milk. I mean, it's just, and then it went back to, okay, so it's not perfect anymore, but what it went through is just like a miraculous. We're like doing the God's job or something, and I think that if we start to look at motherhood in that way, wow. And even something as simple as we survived giving birth. Not everyone gets that gift. And we survived, the baby survived. I mean, these are all the way that I look at them, they're miracles. It's the wonder of life. What is life all about? I went from shopping at fancy stores and Bloomingdale's and just being a very materialistic and superficial person. And then when I had my baby, I said, I'm sorry, I'm not going back to work. I'm going to keep this baby. I'm going to feed her. No one else has my breast milk. And so I don't buy new shoes. Everything changed. Like you said, everything changes. And how wonderful, and I heard somewhere that the love of a mother is like God's love, but God can't necessarily be there physically. So he sent mothers. What a responsibility, but what a gift also.
Yes.
Not everybody gets that gift.
Yes, I agree. And I could relate to what you were saying about, giving students who are trying to conceive, and then you gave them some postures, because that was actually my journey also. And I've written about it on my blog, but I was trying to conceive for 2 years. And in India, if you're over a certain age, and if everything is okay with, even if everything is okay with you, like the tests weren't really conclusive, and they'll just say, okay, you have to go for IVF. There is no other option. So that's what I heard for about 2 years, and I kept saying no, because I just instinctively, maybe it's that yoga, the wisdom that yoga gives you, because I'd been practicing for so long, but I was like, no, I'm just not going to do this. And I went to a yoga teacher here. He's a very experienced yoga teacher. He teaches in Bangalore in a place called Chamrajpet. And I had been in workshops with him on and off, because he does largely yoga therapy. And I met him in one such workshop. And I told him, so this is what's happening. And he's like, okay, show me your reports that everything is normal and everything. So I sent him these reports, and he said, okay, don't worry about it. I'm going to speak to Prashant, and you come to me on Tuesday or Wednesday or something, and I will tell you what to do. I went to him, and literally, as I was turning to go, he gave me the list of asanas, and as I was turning to go, he mumbled something. And I turned back. I'm like, I'm sorry. What did you say? I'm so sorry. I didn't hear you. And he's like, you might conceive in 6 months. You go, you practice these for 6 months. You might conceive in 6 months. Then initially he said, you do it for 6 months, nothing happens, then you come back, but you might conceive in 6 months. And I went back to him in 3 months. Within 3 months that this has happened. When my doctor scanned me, because she wanted to detect it early, because she felt it's a high risk pregnancy. You're so old, you're this and that, not conceiving. And so she wanted to be extra careful. So she did a scan, like, before, like an internal exam, before the external exam for the heartbeat. And she literally said, this is a medical miracle. She's like, I don't believe this. This is a medical miracle. And I said, this is yoga. And I'm so earnestly, I was like, no, this is yoga. I have been practicing in this. And I could see her face. She's like, okay, whatever, like and but to this day, she has also, for her pregnant ladies, she tells them that there is, or women who are trying to conceive, she tells them there is a power to yoga, and she just keeps giving my example, and I keep telling her it is Iyengar yoga. Like, I'm so earnestly telling her, but I think she's just like, okay, she says it works, so let's just recommend it. So that has actually been my experience as well, which is why I wanted to do this series of conversations, just to gain insight. Like, is it only my experience, or are we seeing this a lot more?
Hmm. I mean, I would give my students that were trying to conceive, I'd give them some, some a sequence of poses, and I would tell them, do this naked with your husband. Do these poses. I don't know, but it worked
Mm.
because I thought maybe it's not you, maybe it's him, and I don't know.
Mhm.
I would just give them that. I did not get that information from my Iyengar yoga. That was just Rosa saying stupid things. Somehow they worked. I thought, oh, try this and let's see what happens. And somehow it worked. And I think that what I have seen, I have seen many, like you say, we'll call it miracles, like other people might call it miracles, but I had back pain. I had 3 falls that hurt my back. And I kept, I went to the chiropractor, I went to the doctor, the da 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 da. And when I started to do Iyengar yoga, Supta Parangushtasana, the back pain went away. But before that, when I was going to all these different doctors, there was one neurologist that I went to because I was so desperate. I was like, nothing is working. Acupuncture, massage, like it'll work temporarily, but it doesn't stick. And so he gave me these exercises and like physical therapy exercises. And one of them was what I call Supta Parangushtasana. And I looked at him and I said, I do this in my yoga class. And he dismissed me and he said, call it whatever you want. Just do it every day. So I did. And then the back miraculously, it got better. There's soft tissue. But I always go back to that he was the neurologist. So maybe there's a secret about the nerves. I've been doing a lot during the pandemic studying about trauma, and it's all about the nervous system. So if our nerves are calm, maybe that's the miracle, that we start to do these poses, these sequences, and the nervous system gets rewired to not be in this state of like, from what I saw some of my students, they were so stressed out about, I want to get pregnant, I want to get pregnant, I want to get pregnant. They were so, wanting that motherhood so much, but in an aggressive manner. And, once that I gave them something like the mind to fix the mind on something that is helping them, maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe it was a miracle from God. I don't know. But what if the miracle was that God said, send you this Iyengar yoga in your path, and you listen to it? Some people, they have Iyengar yoga in their face and they're still doing other things that are harming them. So we also have to pay attention and listen. And the greatest gift of motherhood is that you don't have a choice. There's a little human here, like either crying or spitting on your face or pooping all over you or something to get your attention. And, I think that if there's nothing else other than motherhood, when I think about, some mothers after they have the baby, they're like, now I don't have time to practice. I can't practice because now the baby's in the way, or the baby's in the way. I mean, I've heard these things and I can relate to that because it's like, I used to do aerobics. I used to go running, and now I have these 3 kids that are just like sucking all the energy out of me. And, but if we can look at it, we could just step back and say, this is the yoga of service. This motherhood is karma yoga. You forget about yourself a little bit, especially in the first 2 years, I would say, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, depending on, but if you can get in, I know we haven't gotten to this, but I thought it just came up. How do you practice? And I remember when I first started to do yoga, I went to India. I left my 3 children. My youngest was 2. So they were 2, 4, and 6. And I decided I was going to go meet this man. It was his 80th birthday celebration. My grandmother died, left me some money, and it was just exactly what I needed to go to India. And I said, I'm going. when I was at the airport, my middle daughter was holding me by the legs, screaming, crying. And I thought, oh my God, this plane is going to crash and I'm going to leave my children orphaned, because I had never really been away from them for that long. I would go away for the weekend for a workshop or something like that, and my mother-in-law would take care of them. But I think I also needed a break from my, who is now my ex-husband, their father. And going away and seeing this whole other world was meeting Mr. Iyengar and seeing him in action and seeing, yes, he was very disciplined. He was like a lion roaring, but he was like so much love inside of his heart. And even though I got yelled at by Gita many times, and many times after that, when I kept going back to India, but it was this, I look at it like if when my children, when they're the middle one, she'd run out into the street. Of course, I have to grab her arm and pull her in so she doesn't get run over, or if one of my kids is drowning, I have to go in there and pull them up, and I think that sometimes some of that, strength can get misconstrued as, and it can be aggressive. And, yeah, sometimes as a mother, you're exhausted. You're not going to be so nice to your children because you're still human at the end of the day. But seeing the whole world of what Iyengar Yoga is, where it comes from, when I came back, it really set a tone for a very more disciplined practice. And, I would have I have my light on yoga, and I put a what's this called? Like a binding on it, so it could lay flat. And so I would be doing, I'm here with my little children all running around me, driving me crazy, but I have my book out like this, and I'm doing Adho Mukha Svanasana, or I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And they would come around and they say, Mommy, why do you practice so much? This is so easy. And they would open the book and look at they would go to the back of the book and pick something, like Hanumanasana or something really crazy, the advanced poses, and they would just do it. No explanation, no training, no nothing. And I would look at my little one, she would go and she would find Padmasana. Mommy, what's the big deal? Why do you have to practice so much? When I couldn't do Padmasana yet, I'm like this. Yeah. It was very funny because they would make me crazy because I spent, 3 months or three weeks in India for his birthday, and I had all the time to myself. And I thought, oh my God, it was a little lonely some days, but I thought, wow, there's nobody pulling on me, nobody asking me to feed them, my husband not annoying me, and like, wow, this is great to take a break from everything and everyone and just focus on me. But then bringing that back, and all of a sudden, everybody needs something, a piece of me. One needs an arm, the other one has my leg. It was very difficult. But I found that, when you have 3 kids, birthdays are always very plentiful. And they would give them way too many toys. And I'm a Virgo, so I'm very organized. I had to let go of that a little bit. But what I did is I started to put away their toys in big boxes. And I would put the box away, and it wasn't on purpose. It was just because for space, there's too many toys. Like, well, this is ridiculous. It was in the 90s, so they would always get too many toys. So every birthday, we would give away. They would choose what they wanted to give. And sometimes it'd be one toy. They're like, okay, you've outgrown this toy. So as I started to learn about the Yoga Sutras, I started to teach them also. I started to teach them about a parigraha. Like, you don't need to be hoarding so many toys. But for me to be able to practice, I would put the box in the closet. And then every time I wanted to practice, I would bring out a box. And I would set it next to where I was practicing. And they would open the box. Sometimes I would get 10 minutes of a full yoga practice. Sometimes it would go, one time it was 45 minutes. I couldn't believe it. Even though it was like, it seems like for a real practitioner, it seems like such little time, but it was just the time that I needed to restore my back or my mood or whatever, to do a headstand, a shoulder stand, just to get, and sometimes, I would do whatever I could do as fast as Surya Namaskars, anything. But I feel like they would also get that vibe, because my nerves would get calm, their nerves would get calm, and they would feel like they had a brand new box of toys. So I realized, I'm going to keep doing that. And I would, switch them around. And then they got into this routine that they knew, oh, mommy's going to take out a box of, whatever. And it would be like a surprise because they didn't remember what was in there because they have too many toys. And I would get some time for me, not just to do my practice, but also to study because, it's so important for us to continue to learn. And as my daughters got older, I would have all of my yoga books on the dining room table. And once they started to go to school, I would be studying my books and they would be studying and doing their homework. So it's like they got this, and to this day, now that they're adults, they all practice yoga. For a while they rejected it because they were playing volleyball and soccer, but they would always invite me to come and teach yoga to the volleyball team or the wrestling team or whatever. So, because, it was weird. It was like 1995 or 1998, and here I am, wearing Indian baggy pants in Miami. So I was weird, and their parents, mothers, they were all like professionals, journalists, and very interesting cardiologists, and they're saving people from cancer. And oh, my mom is a yoga teacher. It was like embarrassing for them. And then over the years, it kind of became like this cool thing where they're like, oh yeah, my mom is like a superstar Miami teacher. And I'm like, that's not true. Oh yes, you are. Everybody knows you're in Miami. And so, now, because now yoga went mainstream somehow, and they still practice now. For a while, they were like, they didn't want to have anything to do with yoga, but they would do it in secret when I'm not looking. But now my oldest daughter, sometimes she'll call me up and say, what pose should I give my boyfriend? His back is hurting. And I get so excited. I'm like, do you have a belt? I'll send you a belt. Of course, Mom, you gave me all of the props. I have everything. And then my other daughter says, I'm gonna do my neck exercises because her neck, they all have this very long neck and the shoulders are like this from too much texting. And then my youngest one also, she'll come to my classes sometimes. So I feel like I wasn't telling them you have to do yoga. I was doing it and they saw the effect. I don't know, maybe they would tell you a different story, that maybe I was a little nicer after I did yoga. But they started to learn, I taught them also, I was talking about the Yoga Sutras, two things. My daughter, when she was 5 years old, Paulina, my oldest one, she dropped a lamp and part of it broke, but she put it back. And then later I found that there was a broken lamp. So I asked, who broke the lamp? Nobody would tell me. And until finally she broke down, started crying. And I told her, I said, you're not going to get in trouble because you broke the lamp. You're going to get in trouble for lying to me. So I taught her about satya. And my premise in the two things that I really held on to in teaching them as a parent was ahimsa and satya. And, tell the truth. And no, I'm sorry, you cannot hit your sister. If you are upset, you have to take a break, go. And I would, instead of like putting them in timeout, I would put myself in timeout. So I would tell them, I'm taking a timeout. And this was my timeout. It was Uttanasana. Because sometimes I wanted to kill them because there's three of them. They're all fighting. They're whatever. And I said, oh my God, I'm not going to deal with them. I'm going to deal with me. And so I would teach them. I said, when I get so angry that I want to punch somebody in the face, I do this pose. And they would start to do it. And I would see them that they would, I'm going to go in the bathroom because I have to do Uttanasana. And they would go in there, and I started to teach them the names of the poses in Sanskrit, because my hope was always like, I'm going to take them to India with me. And my oldest daughter, we were planning, I was going to take her for her 30th birthday to India, but that's when everything shut down in 2020. So she says, you owe me a trip to India, but now she's too busy. But I think that the yoga is so important for mothers because there's so much that can help us to recognize when we're out of control, when we need to take a break from the children, because, they're humans and they want our attention or whatever. I had my middle daughter, Daniela. One day she stood up like this with her hands on the hips. I was yelling at her for something. I don't even remember what it was. She stood like this and she said to me, Mommy, you have no right to talk to me like that. What about ahimsa? Oh my God, I'm raising monsters. They're actually listening. So that's how it's gone at the Santana household.
So I was speaking to a yoga teacher in Jerusalem, Aggie. I don't know if you've heard about her. Yeah,
Yes.
so she was, and we were discussing how, how can mothers get back to practice, like with young kids? And she said the same thing that you did, that, if 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then when it's 45 minutes, she was like, it's like, it's a jackpot. Like you cannot believe it. And she suggested that mothers, especially new mothers, you take your time. Like, don't say within 3 months, within 6 months, I should have this full practice. Even a 10 minute, period of time is practice. It's a full practice. So I really, what I appreciate about Iyengar yoga is this approach, that they're not saying, well, it has to be an hour and a half or whatever, 45 minutes or 1 hour, or it's not, or it's a fragmented practice. So I think that's something that really helped me, because I was in a hurry to get back on the mat, and to get back to normal, and it was just not possible. Like it's just on a physical level, because your hormones are all over the place. Then of course you have a kid. It's just not possible. So now I just tell everybody, look, these senior teachers are saying that 10 minutes is good, so we should listen to the senior teachers. So that's one thing. Yeah.
You know what? One of the things also that happens, for example, this is one of the beauties of Iyengar yoga, that we have toys. If you leave a toy here and you're doing your practice and you let the baby be around you, you're not pushing them away, they're going to be attracted. Like pets, when I'm doing my practice, my dog wants to be near me, because whatever energy that we are magnifying or cultivating or whatever it is, there's something that is very attractive to them. And I think that the same thing happens with children. When they're little, because we would have the moms that would bring their babies, I would give them a bunch of foam blocks and they would just, suck on it or whatever. There's a bolster that would crawl over the bolster. And so if we also make it, and then some of the older kids, they would start to build all kinds of, beautiful structures that then they would knock them down, not the wooden ones, because we would talk about them. But I think that it's an opportunity for us to teach them, this is also what I need. Because as mothers, we're always doing everything for everyone else. And I think that especially those of us that have daughters, but I think also for sons, I don't know because I don't have a son, but I think that it's also important for us to teach them that we matter, we need this, because they're also taking note for the future self of what's important, of like, oh, I remember when I was little, my father used to be a bullfighter part-time in Mexico. And so she had this bullfighter cape that she would lay in the living room. She would set it down. She would put on her leotard with her tights, and she would do these exercises that we weren't allowed. We had to go, it was like at night she would do it. She'd put us to bed, and we weren't allowed to come and disturb her because it was her time. And I remember my brother and I and my sister, we'd like peek into, what is she doing? Why can't we be with her? And she would be doing like Ustrasana and all these things. I learned later on that my aunt, who had come from China, had taught her the Tibetan rites. There was 5 or 7 Tibetan rites or whatever it is. And so that's what she was practicing. And she was very dedicated and very committed. And now I think about, she had this discipline that she was taking time for herself. And so for me, I've always also been seeking healing, and she would go get massages. She would always going to look for herbalists and naturopaths. And there's always this path of natural healing. And I feel like she never really said that she was doing that or told me to do it. But as mothers, our children are watching us. They don't hear anything we say, but they do what we do. And I think that's a very important thing for us to realize, because our children are watching us, we're setting the example. We're teaching them that it's okay, that when you're this age, you're also going to take care of yourself. And I find my oldest daughter, one day she decided not to go to work, and she was in her bedroom, and she was in bed watching like romantic movies or something, and she had chocolates all around her, and she had all these tissues because she was crying. And I said, "What are you doing? Are you sick? Are you okay?" And she said, "Mom, I got my period today, and I'm taking a Paulina day." I said, "What's a Paulina day?" "I'm going to stay home, watch sad movies so I cry. I'm going to listen to sad songs so they make me cry, and I'm going to eat a lot of chocolate." I thought, oh, okay, so this is self-care. And they all do that now. They take time out for themselves. And it's really very exciting when I go to one of my daughters, they're 31, so they're adults, and I see the yoga mat down and like evidence that she didn't put it there because I was coming there, because I can see like there's other things there too.
Right.
And I can see that her light on yoga, it's getting worn out. And she has this other book on the neck and shoulders, to help her with her tension there. And so I feel like as parents, we give them something. It's kind of like Mr. Iyengar left this legacy. He left us this light, and we took it. We're doing that for our children also. And when we give them the gift of the light of yoga, that they see it like radiating out of us, they want to do it. If it's forced upon them, they probably won't want to do it. And those 10 minutes are so important because, when my kids were little, because I was very, very stiff. So I would sit, they would play Barbies, with their dolls or whatever, Legos also. And I would sit in Upavishta Konasana. So I'm here talking with them. I'm at their, level of their face. And I would be in Upavishta Konasana. Maybe I do this. Actually, this I would do more when I would go watch them play soccer. I'd go in the corner and I'd do all my forward bending because I thought they were more discreet than doing Surya Namaskar. And after a while, all the moms would come over and say, "What are you doing? Is that yoga? Can we do it with you?" Of course, my children were very embarrassed. And so, but I'm playing when they're little. I come into Baddha Konasana, I was working on my Padmasana. Now I can do Padmasana, but I couldn't at the time. And it was something very natural while I'm there that it's like a part of our life that we do yoga. And I see my kids, sometimes they'll come over. If there's a mat down, they will immediately lay down and start doing something. So when I know they're coming over, I put the mat out just in case, and I have ropes in my living room. So they always come and they open their chest on the ropes, or they'll tell me, "Oh, mommy, can you give me traction?" in any time. So it feels really nice to see that, my hobby has become their way of life, that it's a normal thing. I remember one time my daughter, she had diarrhea. And so this was my medicine cabinet. I said, "But let me see what Mr. Iyengar says about diarrhea." "Oh, sure, Shasana. Go do a headstand." "I don't do a headstand. I want medicine." I said, "I don't have any medicine right now. Do headstand until we feel better." So her sisters, for emotional support, they would go and they'd do headstand with her. And then she would get better. And so I think that they also started to learn that, oh, this worked. They didn't want it to work, but it worked. So it stays in the, and it wasn't a long, perfect headstand, nothing, just get her upside down and she's crying because she doesn't want to do a headstand. But now you got to do shoulder stand because you did headstand. I don't know if that's child abuse, but
There was another thing that you were saying, which I found quite interesting. Like earlier, you were saying that sometimes you see on Instagram a lot of people doing all these postures which are not recommended, and you sometimes send them messages. So I think that kind of approach to yoga, that kind of attitude or behavior in a pregnant woman also comes from a place of anxiety. Like we yoga practice is so central to our lives that if there's anything that takes us away from it, we start feeling anxious or we start feeling insecure, perhaps. So how, like, but of course there are certain rules that you have to follow. There are certain asanas that you cannot do, and it's the fact is that your practice is going to change, and it should change, but how can we change, like what can mothers to be, what is it that you tell your students who are pregnant, and who are clinging perhaps to that old practice, old flexibility levels, what would you tell them to kind of have them calm down and practice what serves them rather than just practicing for the sake of practicing?
Well, one of the things that I've told them is, I think that when they understand, you have to be careful of overstretching your ligaments when you're pregnant, because of the hormone that it's making you more stretchy. I think that when you use the scientific why, it resonates much more. It's not just, oh, because Rosa is saying this. It's not about me. It's really about the baby. And I always reassure them that after you have the baby, you can come back to your practice and you're going to come back and do everything you did. This is just a temporary situation. Right now, you have to stay, focused. You have to pay attention to what's happening. This reminded me of a student that came to me. She was a very dedicated Ashtanga practitioner for many, many, many years. And when she got pregnant, she came to her teacher and asked her teacher, who was male, and said, I just found out I'm pregnant. Is there anything different that I should do in my practice? And the teacher said to her, no, you don't have to change anything. Just keep doing everything. You'll be fine. Because he didn't know. And she ended up having a miscarriage. So I think that happened in my early career. And I thought that was very irresponsible of the teacher. And it taught me to say, when I don't know, to say, I don't know. And I'm very blessed to have a lot of teachers in India and around the world that I can send them a WhatsApp message and ask, because I have been faced with situations that I don't know. I can't know everything. And in terms of mothers, I really empower them to follow their intuition, because this woman said to me, when he told me that, it didn't feel right. But since he was my teacher, I trusted him. And so she had a miscarriage at 2 months of pregnancy, and she was heartbroken and devastated and felt very guilty about it. So, our minds can also get, of course, this is something very tragic and very painful, that I decided in my world, I was going to be extra careful. So I'm a little bit like over the top, extra careful, because I don't have Mr. Iyengar next to me or Gita Ji next to me to tell me, oh, don't do that or don't do that. So I go to the extreme. I'm going to be super conservative. The first 2 months, 3 months, you're practically not going to do anything that could potentially lead to any problems, because I want to meet this baby. I want to hold the baby, and I want you to be healthy. I want the baby to be healthy. And, when this woman told me this story, I was just so heartbroken. And that's how I ended up with some students that came from other systems, that, not because of her, but just from, word of mouth gets around. Oh, you're pregnant? You got to go see Rosa. You can't keep doing this practice. And I think, and it's not about Rosa, it's really about, because I studied Iyengar Yoga, and, I'm the one that's in South Florida and the Miami area that's been doing this, for a very long time, and have had the experience with many, many different things. I think that the world of Instagram is a dangerous world if we're learning, if we're looking for guidance on Instagram. I'm also in a lot of groups on Facebook that are like for yoga teachers. And I get very nervous about the world of yoga, because some teachers that have been teaching for a long time, they ask some therapeutic questions that are very specific, and they don't have guidance. So unfortunately, with these 200-hour teacher trainings, there's a lot of teachers that don't have someone that they can ask to guide them and help them. I've had situations where I have told students, I can't help you, but this person might be able to help you. I send them to somebody else. And I think that being honest is really important. I go back to ahimsa, satya. This is how I raised my children, and they still, they turned out pretty good because of these two. Because if you practice those two, all the others will happen. And I think that when a teacher is so starved for attention that they would jeopardize their well-being and the baby's well-being for an Instagram post for views, it's not yoga.
Mm.
And I think that unfortunately now yoga is not understood. And there's a lot of like the pop yoga kind of, that's out there that's sexualizing the asanas. And, I think that there is still a need for those who are understanding what yoga really means and why are we on this path. Motherhood, I don't want to say that it's temporary, but it changes. Just like one day, if I'm sitting in Virasana, I say, oh, today I need a block. Tomorrow I don't need a block. Yesterday, what did I need? And we're continuously adapting our practice. What do I need today for this, whatever human situation is happening? And motherhood is like that too, because we have to attend to this little human that's so demanding in front of us. And then the bigger human that's, their fault that you're even pregnant. So then there's another human. So I think that motherhood now is very complicated because there's so much, we're being pulled in so many directions. And then there's that pressure of, oh, what's going on in the Instagram world that I don't look like that, instead of what can we do to create families that thrive? How can we focus on being so supportive of mothers that motherhood isn't so painful and difficult, emotionally, physically, financially draining if you decide to stay home, if it's possible. I think children are also very resilient. So no matter what's going on in the household, they're going to be able to continue. And I think that for the mothers, having a practice, I always joke that mothers should have to do, it should be a requirement for every mother to do Iyengar Yoga. The government should pay for it. Because if mothers, this is one of the things that, I forget if it was Guruji, if it was Gitaji, there was a story about that he was, it was either him or her, and sorry, I get sometimes the stories confused if I didn't get the story directly. But the story was basically that they decided to give this mother so much attention because of that mother. The whole community was depending on that mother. So if you as a mother are well taken care of, all the people around you that you take care of are also going to be well. And I think that that's one of the missing elements in the world right now, that we're not taking care of our mothers. And the mother is the first one. It's the first guru. And if we can honor all the mothers in the world and help a mother that's near us that we can, what a different world we would be. And all we have to do is just start with the mothers. Mother is well, the baby's going to be well. If the mother is not well, the baby's not going to be well. I've seen that over and over and over again in my life and other people's lives. And we need to really nurture and honor and respect and support our mothers. Because without them, we wouldn't be here.
Yes, that's beautiful. And I think if we're just cognizant of what you've just said, when we're mothers to be, like when we're pregnant, and we remember what you just said, I think maybe a lot of us would treat ourselves with a little more kindness and not just worry about how flexible we are or how we look also, because you mentioned Instagram, and Instagram is, so many photos of women looking perfect, I guess, during pregnancy, and you're just feeling like a whale, or like sometimes your shoes don't fit, and but every mother on Instagram is so photoshopped, I guess. She looks so amazing. Yeah. So, but I wanted to also ask you, like you said that you tell your moms, your mothers, to be that, okay, this phase is temporary and your practice will come back. um, so when I after I delivered, and then I started when I restarted classes, which was after in the fourth month postpartum, then I was attending Tahira's class, and I'm like, Tahira, this body does not feel like my. I couldn't touch my toes, and I had forgotten. Of course, I started yoga when I couldn't touch my toes, like but that was a long time ago. So there was a time when I couldn't touch my toes, and now again I was in the same situation, and I was like, Tahira, what is this? What is happening? And she's like, oh, don't worry about it. And she was very casual about it. And then I said, okay, but like, how long is it going to take? I'm not feeling good and stuff. She's like, maybe a year. And at that time, I was like, whoa, 1 year? And, and the people who I'd spoken to, like people who weren't yoga practitioners, they're like, well, 9 months in, 9 months out. And, by the ninth month, everything should be okay, like be fitting into the old clothes, and physically everything should be the same. But then when I read medical articles, and when I speak to Iyengar teachers, and they say no, it could take a year, it could take more, because even your hormones are not back to normal. So, what advice do you have for these teachers, like or practitioners who have delivered, and how they're so in so much hurry, because the message they're getting from Instagram also, and otherwise from other women also, is like, yeah, I was done. Like, within 3 months, I went back to my workout. 6 weeks, 6 weeks is another big thing. Like 6 weeks, I was back into my workout and all of that. So, what advice would you give? Like Tahira told me 1 year. I was like, okay, I don't like it, but okay. She, like I will just surrender and listen to her, and go slowly and safely. What would you say? What is a realistic approach for postpartum women?
I think that understanding that it took you 9 months to grow this belly, and then take you at least 9 months to go back. We don't see it, but on the inside, where the placenta was attached, there's a big scar there. So we don't realize that, oh, I want my butt to go back to be what it was before, not realizing that you're healing also from the inside. You're healing from a complete change and disturbance to your sleep cycles, a complete and 180-degree turn and change in your relationship with your spouse. There's a complete 150 million thousand change with your whole family. If you're working, there's a whole change in the work. And I think that rather than asking, how long is this going to take me to go back to where I was, that you just practice santosha, the contentment that your life is never going to be the same. Accept it. It will never be the same. You will never have the same body. Now, here's another thing. Maybe later on, you're going to have a better body. We don't consider that. We think it's over. And in that time, I think that instead of focusing on that external shape of what's going on the outside and everything you've lost, focus on your child. And our mind, we can focus. This is really what Iyengar Yoga is. Patanjali in the Yoga Sutra says you can focus on anything. You can focus on an effulgent light within. You can focus on a saint. You can focus on your breath. You can focus on your kid. Your child is your object of meditation.
Yeah.
And when you're there and you're present, you're going to realize that time, first of all, is going to go so fast that all of a sudden your genes are going to be too big for you. And you didn't even realize, because you're going to be chasing that kid all over the place. I think that accepting the way nature provides is so important, because all of it has already been pre-designed. So how you get pregnant, what happens during pregnancy, how you deliver, how your body prepares for delivery, how your body creates milk nourishment for this little piece of human that is disturbing your sleep so much, but that opens your heart like nothing ever will before, or maybe the second one or the third one if you end up having more children. But if you're focusing on the wonder of this human, and look at their fingers. If you're looking at their fingers and their toes, massaging them with oil so they go to sleep better, you won't have time to be thinking about, oh, my old jeans that I used to wear. Leave them there. One day you'll come back to them and they'll fit again. It's just natural. But also, some women, they go back to work right away. So their body's going to, they're not completely healed yet. Some women are going to stay home and eat more cookies because they're depressed. So their body is not going to be the same. So if you can think about, okay, God gave me this mission. I have this temple that housed another soul. And I was given the responsibility to raise and take care of this divine being in front of me. The mind changes to focus on something different. Yeah. Rather than still dwelling on, oh, I had that pink mini skirt that looked so cute on me when I was a size 2 and I was 20 years old. I think that I want to say in this generation, there's so much focus on that, which is, exacerbated by social media. But if we think back at all of the ancient sculptures, the Venus of Willendorf, she was rounded and showed like it was a symbol of fertility when you are having your curves. And now we want to deny that. And the funny thing is that as women, for some reason, we believe that that's the standard, that thin body, that's the standard with no curves, maybe just a few curves in certain places. But what is really attractive, if you ask, for example, if you ask my husband, one time I was feeling very insecure. This is my new husband. I was feeling very insecure about my hips because I had gained a bunch of weight, and I tried on a dress that was not very flattering for my body. And I came out and I said, what do you think? This is horrible, isn't it? You know what he said to me? He said, are you afraid of your hips? And I looked at him and I said, what do you mean? I mean, it was a very unflattering dress. I didn't get the dress. But he made me realize that in my mind, I think that I should be much more thin and like a stick. But that's not so much what's attractive. If we look at the Mayan goddesses and the Indian statues and everything, they're never without curves. Sometimes they have too many curves. I think we have to be afraid. We have to be less afraid of our curves and embrace this is a temple that God chose me in this lifetime to have these curves. Maybe in my last lifetime, I had no curves. Sometimes I think about, I don't have enough. Except when I was breastfeeding. I was so happy because I finally had the right curves. Embracing what's inside is so much more important than what's on the outside. And when we focus on that time that we have with our babies is so short. My kids are now in their 30s. And I can tell you, it went by so quickly. And every time I see a baby, I want to go back to that time because I didn't sleep, but it was really precious times and a precious mission because everything that they're going to learn, you're going to preset it the first 6 years. That's when you're setting them up. The rest of life will take care of them. But the first 6 years are so important for the child's well-being, for their connection with their mother, that you're there with your face because they're reading every single nuance in your face. And when you're doing that to your child, that's the connection that then when they're a teenager and they're having a difficult life, they're going to come back to this. They're going to come back to see you and to talk to you. But you're planting the roots now. Your jeans may or may not fit later, so you buy new jeans.
Yeah, I think, a lot of what you're saying has to do with spiritual. It's a spiritual approach to motherhood. And because, I know a lot of yoga teachers, I've been practicing for so long, I think that was very instinctive. So, like I told you, I don't know if I told you, but like at 4 a.m., my daughter wakes up at 4 a.m. Every day, and she's been doing that for the last week or so. But it would be, I think that would this lack of sleep and feeling tired all the time would be a lot more difficult if I didn't have the yoga approach to motherhood, and if I didn't have a community of yoga moms to tell me how to approach it. Also, I think it's unfortunate that like social media, we have so many men talking about postpartum. I mean, just recently I heard a nutritionist, I think he was, or maybe he was a fitness trainer of a Bollywood actress. And he said, well, other women, never go back to their pregnancy, like pre-pregnancy body, because they don't work out. But look at this Bollywood actress, and she will be up at 6 a.m. every day, and she'll work out. And that's why, within 3 months, she was back to her original size or her pre-pregnancy size. And what was gratifying about that was that in the comments, you could see that everybody was pissed off. Men were also pissed off. Like, you can't say that. So, yeah, but unfortunately, I think the majority of the messages that we're getting from social media is just, the kind of birth you should have, whether it's a C-section or vaginal delivery, how long it takes you to get back. Now, what kind of mother are you? All of these unhealthy messages come from social media. But I think if you have a community of like spiritually inclined people around you, then it makes it really, you feel supported. I think it makes it easier and you feel supported.
One of the things that I was invited to when I had my first daughter, she was about a year old, I was invited to a play group with other mothers. And I think that you just touched upon something that's really important for new mothers, especially, to even if you have one friend, that's all you need, that has a baby, because that sense of community you can talk to, and you can realize you're not alone, that none of the babies sleep, that you share the same problems of your pants not fitting or this happening or your husband's misbehaving or whatever it is. So that, and I realized that that was something that really supported me in those early days. And I think that that's very important for any new mother, to seek out help and not try to do it all by yourself. That when you're feeling like, I can't do this, I need a break, give the baby to someone for a moment so you can go for a walk and, rewire your brain into a sense of calmness. Everything in our life really, it comes down to like, what decisions are we making? And we have to make decisions. Now we're not only making decisions for what's best for us, we're making a decision for another human being. But those decisions also in part have to do with, what do you need? So you can be at your best, so that you're giving to this baby from your abundance. You're not just getting depleted by giving what you don't have to give. And I think those are the conversations that should be on social media instead of what the Bollywood actress is doing. Yeah, she's a Bollywood actress. Of course, she gets paid to look good. That's her job, But most of us are not Bollywood actresses in this lifetime. Maybe next lifetime we get to be a Bollywood actress, and then you get the trainer and you get a whole team of people and your whole family taking care of your baby. It's just, we have to look inside our home, but we also have to look inside our home. What do I need today? And be honest with ourselves. Today, I need a break. I'm feeling shaky. I feel like I need to take a nap. And find someone that maybe you can trade. I had a friend of mine who had 3 kids, and I would take her 3 kids after they were like 4 and up. And I would take her 3 kids, because that way my kids would each have a friend, and she would go on a weekend getaway with her husband. And we would trade like this. And it was just so wonderful, because it was crazy having the kids, but it was also exciting, because I'm like, okay, you have 3 kids, you can take care of 6, no problem, And not having the kids and having that time to just, what do you want to do? Nothing. Let's just sit here and do nothing. It's okay too. But yes, motherhood is a very difficult job. But I'm going to steal these words from Mr. Iyengar. Like Mr. Iyengar said, teaching is a difficult job, but it's the best. It's difficult art, but it's the best thing you can do for humanity. It's the same thing for motherhood. it is also an art. We still have to continue learning and improving ourselves, not on the physical Bollywood beauty standard kind of self, but improving our own understanding of learning how to be a parent. You know, who taught us? We didn't learn that. And being present to really enjoy these moments. My mother gave me the best advice that I didn't understand when my kids were little. When she would see that I was frustrated and overwhelmed with 3 kids running in all different directions, she said to me this. She said, your children are borrowed. You only get to borrow them for a short time. Enjoy it and take each moment as sacred.
Beautiful.
Now I understand.
That's beautiful. I also wanted to talk to you about, like, we've been talking about motherhood and the spiritual approach to motherhood and, what it means and all of that. But also, because you work with women postpartum as well, I wanted to ask you, what have you seen in terms of healing, the difference between like a C-section delivery and a vaginal delivery? Because what's happening in India, at least, is that everyone says you should at least try to go for a natural, a vaginal delivery. And and that's great. Like, we should try to go for a vaginal delivery, but a lot of women are so attached to the idea of a vaginal delivery that sometimes they don't take the call fast enough, for a C-section, or there's just this kind of like unhealthy attachment. And of course, it's fueled by societal expectation again of what kind of delivery is better. So, and I guess a lot of people think that the vaginal delivery is better because they feel like, okay, the body's going to go back to normal very quickly or something like that. But in your experience as a yoga teacher, the healing, is it really that different? Should women, of course, if you need a C-section, you should go for a C-section. You should listen to your doctors and stuff. So you shouldn't be scared of C-sections. So look, from that point of view, like, are women who've had C-sections, is it difficult for them to recover? Are their bodies forever changed? And, are they always going to have that, like a pooch, what they call a mom pooch or something they call it on Instagram?
Yeah, the C-section pooch.
Yes.
I think that, I'm not a doctor and I can't speak for all the women. I only have a little microcosm of the women that I have served, and none of my students had C-sections. They all had vaginal deliveries. So I can't speak to that.
Okay.
What I can speak to is my students that had C-sections before they came to me, and that there was always like a part of their abdomen that just wouldn't work. Or, when we were doing Urdhva Prasarita Padasana or something like that, like abdominal things, that they could feel that there was a part that wasn't functional. What I know about vaginal deliveries is that, when that is possible, and I think that we have to kind of have common sense. If you're in an emergency and the baby's life is in danger and you need to have an emergency C-section, that's one thing. There's also the other thing where women decide, oh, I want to go on vacation, so I want this baby to be born on this day, so I'm going to schedule my C-section so that I can go on vacation, and then the timing will be all right. And I think that's something different. So, C-sections are not the same. And again, I'm not a doctor, but what I do understand about vaginal deliveries is that the whole process, because it is natural, there is a sense of like there's a squeezing to the brain that's supposed to be good for the body. I don't know what it is because I'm not a doctor. But I also, I had only vaginal deliveries. And from my understanding of friends that I know that have had C-sections, it seems that it does take longer. They have a harder time breastfeeding because of the pressure on the scar. So it does, it is an operation. So it's going to have, those implications. But I mean, I'm an all natural kind of hippie, like do whatever is natural, but I'm the daughter of a medical doctor. So if you have to do something, if there has to be an intervention so that the mother and the child are safe, then, you got to do what you got to do. And I think that the most important thing is that women find doctors or midwives that they trust, because that they're going to be your team. They're going to be your support system. So if I trust my midwife, I'm going to do everything she tells me. If I don't trust her, I don't connect with her, then it's better to find somebody else. I had natural deliveries because I chose to deliver with midwives. Um, and that's the old way how things used to be. And then the doctors took over. And some doctors, unfortunately, they also, if you're due on December 24th and they have a Christmas party to go to, they're going to schedule a C-section so they can get to their party.
Yeah. Yes.
And, some of the countries around the world that have the lowest rates of C-sections, we have to wonder and do research of why. What are they doing? And what are we doing also to prepare the mother for birth, for a natural delivery, if that's possible? But it's not always possible. It's like the midwives, when they took me, I had to meet a lot of qualifications that I'm low risk. If you're a high risk pregnancy, then you have to be open to there might be some interventions that are needed. So I think it's a very personalized situation. It's not one's better than the other. It's what do you need? Who knows? Maybe it's like, what's your karma? you know, if your karma is to have a C-section, then you have a C-section. In the next lifetime, you'll have a vaginal delivery. Who knows? Why not?
Yes, and I remember my yoga teachers, they just said, don't worry about anything, and whatever comes, we will figure it out. They
Yes.
literally said, don't worry, we'll figure it out. Listen to your doctor, and then we'll see. And I remember I was given, I think, thyroid medication as a precaution. Like my doctor recommended that you take some, yes, thyroxine or something for because it was a high risk pregnancy, according to her, not according to my yoga teachers. My yoga teachers, I remember Gulnaz said, if your doctor saw you doing all these headstands and inversions, she would have a heart attack. So she's like, I don't know why why she's recommending this. And my other teacher, he actually said, look, even if you start taking this medicine, fine, you will at least have in your mind that you did whatever the doctor told you to do. And then afterwards, we will get you off of that medicine. So don't worry about anything. So it made me, ultimately, I didn't take that medicine because I really like the way Gulnaz justified it, that she saw all these things that you're doing. And it was actually fine. I went for my thyroid exam, like the test again, and it was normal. And then again, the doctor was like, well, this is a miracle again. So I think what really helped me with my being so close to so many good experienced yoga teachers was knowing that whatever comes, whether it's during pregnancy or postpartum, like there is something we can do about it. But one thing they told me was you have to be patient. Like you have to be patient. You cannot, and even postpartum, like wait for 3 months, then in the fourth month you come, and then we'll start slowly, slowly, 1 year. So that I think that also made my pregnancy and postpartum a little calmer than if I didn't have any yoga for support. I mean, I was I think delivering when I was 42 or 43, like 42. I conceived when I was 41, and that in India, it's like it's a medical miracle, like my doctor said. Like they just it was. I mean, I'm like a case study for her you know so yeah, it's all the power of yoga, and it's the magic of yoga, I guess.
I think that postpartum, what I gave my students, because they said, what can I do after I have the baby? I said, you do Shavasana, nothing else. And they said, oh, I like that. So already I planted in something. You're going to do something, Shavasana. That's it.
Nice.
Don't feel like, oh, I'm not getting. It's kind of like if somebody gives up cake. I can't eat any cake. That's all they think about is cake.
Yeah.
If I say you can't do yoga for 4 months, oh my God, I'm missing out. I'm not improving my Kapotasana. I got to work on my Uttanasana. I got to work on this. I have so much to work on. Like, do Shavasana.
Mm.
Oh, then the mind can, I like that. Or maybe not, but these women, they were so tired and heavy and it's hot here.
Um,
So they said, when you have the baby, you only do Shavasana. That's the only pose you're allowed to do. Oh, that's great. Of course, then none of them do it because they're too busy.
yes, yeah. So the last question I have for you is, does what is the difference between yoga practice, like the physical practice of yoga like pre-pregnancy and like postpartum, and does the practice ever come back? We're so worried about losing the asanas. Does it ever come back, even if it takes 20 years? But does it come back? And what is the difference between the two stages of practice?
What I saw with my students, because I didn't do yoga when I was pregnant, what I saw in my students is that they had a very strong practice.
Mhm.
Then they had their pregnancy practice, which, some poses got omitted, but they still had strong legs, strong. Then they had the baby. Then they took some time. When they came back, they were more tired because most of them weren't sleeping. So I would give them a little bit, some more restorations. And little by little, I have a very bad concept of time, which is good because I don't know how long it took. I wasn't paying attention. I was just taking one day at a time. And I think for mothers, it's like, oh, what is my child going to be when he grows up? My daughter, when she was 5, my oldest daughter, she used to cry because all her friends knew that they were going to be police officers, they were going to be nurses, they were going to be doctors, they were going to be this, they were going to be that. She would cry because she didn't know what she was going to do. And I told her, maybe what you're going to do doesn't exist yet. And she didn't understand what I was saying. I didn't understand what I was saying, but I had to come up with an answer, you know? And now she does something that didn't exist back then, something that I don't understand, some kind of technology, something that didn't exist back then. So it was true. And I think that what is your practice going to be like? There will probably be, what I have seen is that they've learned how to nurture a baby. They learn how to nurture themselves. And because the practice before the child was all about, oh, I'm so strong, I do this, I do that. That was before. After they have the baby and they see what their body went through, there's an inner strength that is revealed. And there's also a sense of, it's okay if I don't do this. The pregnancy and the that whole time gave them also an opportunity to realize I didn't fall apart. You know what I did the other day? I did Supta Baddha Konasana and I felt so good. Is that okay during postpartum? I mean, after postpartum. If your body was seeking it, if your body was, how did you feel after? Oh my God, I felt so great. I put a blanket to support my thighs so my groins didn't stretch too much and the back felt really good. So I think that the empowerment that happens throughout this whole process takes the mother into another realm of, having to care for someone outside of you is already spirituality because you forget about yourself. The ego gets to the side. You don't have time to be dealing with all your stuff because you have to deal with this emergency vomit in front of your face. That gives you something in your practice that makes you realize that you are so much more than this physical body. And what I have seen is that my students, it takes a little time, probably more than a year, I would say, where they end up going to another stage in their practice that is much more fulfilling, not just physically, like they start out on the physical level, but there is definitely an evolution of an introspective nature that they didn't have before. There's also there's a value in accepting and being much more open to the restorative nature. Because when you can do everything, restoration is like, I don't want to lay around. Now they appreciate it so that they can actually go deeper into their practice. So that's what I've witnessed. And I've also witnessed women that, yes, they were pretty, but after they went through this whole process, they radiate this inner beauty that is way past what we see on Instagram. It's not, no filter. It's an inner beauty that comes from the inside.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Like motherhood. Motherhood is also a beautiful phase and journey.
Mhm.
Well, thank you so much. Let us know also if people wanted to attend classes with you, especially moms who are pregnant or mothers to be and moms postpartum. Do you do online classes or only offline? Where, if online, where, offline, where? Yeah.
I do online classes through my website, yogarosa.com. And I also teach classes in person here in Hollywood, Florida at Yoga One. And I would recommend that anybody that's pregnant would be better suited in-person classes. I don't recommend it online, especially with a teacher that you've never met. I think that it's better to be in person so the teacher can help you and adjust you and offer suggestions, because there's a lot that we miss online because we can't see how you're breathing. We can't see the color of your skin, your eyes, you know, the subtleties that can make a difference in a class. But it's been a pleasure talking with you, Pragya.
Yes,
Thank you
thank
for
you so
inviting
much.
me.
Yeah, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. I think a lot of people, a lot of women especially, will find a lot of value, especially in the spiritual aspect that we spoke about, and that we spoke about extensively. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And to all the mothers, just know you're doing a good job and follow your intuition.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.